The growing diplomatic activity between the United States, China, and Russia is placing Iran at the center of a new geopolitical balancing act. A meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, alongside expected talks between Vladimir Putin and Xi, could reshape the political and economic future of the Middle East, especially for Iran. For years, Iran has relied heavily on both China and Russia as strategic partners against Western pressure. China has remained Iran's largest oil buyer despite sanctions, while Russia and Iran have strengthened military and political cooperation through regional conflicts and energy partnerships. But analysts say the situation may be entering a new phase as global powers begin recalculating their priorities. A potential Trump-Xi meeting is already drawing worldwide attention. Reports suggest trade tensions, Taiwan, technology competition, and Middle East stability may dominate discussions. However, behind closed doors, Iran could emerge as one of the most sensitive topics. Trump has repeatedly promised a tougher stance on Tehran, warning that Iran must never be allowed to expand its nuclear capabilities. At the same time, China has been attempting to position itself as a global mediator, especially after helping restore diplomatic relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia in recent years. Political observers believe Beijing may try to avoid a direct confrontation with Washington over Iran. China's economy depends heavily on stable global markets and uninterrupted energy routes through the Gulf region. Any major escalation involving Iran could threaten Chinese economic interests. This means China may quietly pressure Tehran to reduce regional tensions, avoid direct military confrontation, and limit activities that could provoke the United States or its allies. Such a shift would represent a major challenge for Iran, which has long depended on diplomatic backing from Beijing at the United Nations and through economic cooperation. Meanwhile, another major development is expected, a possible summit between Putin and Xi Jinping. The two leaders have deepened their partnership significantly since the war in Ukraine began. Russia increasingly relies on China economically, while both countries share opposition to what they describe as American global dominance. Iran has become an important part of this emerging Russia-China axis. Tehran has supplied drones and military technology to Moscow, while Russia has expanded defense cooperation with Iran. However, experts say Moscow's priorities remain centered on Ukraine, NATO, and preserving its own strategic survival. If Putin and Xi discuss broader regional stability, Iran may once again become a bargaining point rather than a priority partner. China and Russia both prefer a stable Middle East that protects trade routes and prevents large-scale war. Neither country appears eager to support an uncontrolled regional conflict involving Iran and the West. Some analysts believe Beijing could encourage Moscow to help restrain Tehran diplomatically. Others argue Russia may use its relationship with Iran as leverage during negotiations with the West, especially regarding sanctions and energy markets. Economically, the outcome of these meetings could also impact Iran significantly. If China reduces oil purchases from Iran under international pressure or seeks a softer relationship with Washington, Tehran could face serious financial strain. Iran's economy remains heavily dependent on oil exports, many of which are tied to Chinese demand. At the same time, if tensions between Washington and Beijing worsen, China could deepen cooperation with Iran as part of a broader anti-Western strategy. In that scenario, Tehran may gain stronger economic lifelines and diplomatic protection. For the Iranian leadership, the uncertainty creates both opportunity and risk. Tehran is carefully watching whether China and Russia remain committed strategic allies or begin prioritizing their own global negotiations with the United States. Across the Middle East, governments are also monitoring these developments closely. Gulf nations, Israel, and Western allies all understand that decisions made in meetings between Trump, Xi, and Putin could influence sanctions, oil markets, military alliances, and the possibility of future conflict involving Iran. The coming months may therefore prove critical. If diplomacy dominates, Iran could face increasing pressure from allies to moderate its policies. But if global rivalries intensify, Tehran may instead become an even more important partner for both Moscow and Beijing. Either way, the expected high-level meetings between the world's most powerful leaders are no longer just about trade or Ukraine. They may also help determine Iran's future position in an increasingly divided global order.